Somewhere between 1939 and 1945, the entire world lost its mind. World War II was the largest, deadliest, most expensive, most destructive conflict in all of human history. Over 70 million people died. Entire cities were erased. Maps were redrawn. The world that came out the other side looked almost nothing like the world that went in. And we're going to explain the whole thing, from start to finish, while you sit on your couch. To understand World War II, you need to understand what happened after World War I. And what happened after World War I was a complete disaster. When WWII ended in 1918, the winning Allied powers sat down at the Paris Peace Conference and wrote the Treaty of Versailles. And they basically handed Germany the world's worst bill. Germany had to accept full blame for the war, pay reparations worth roughly $33 billion, the equivalent of hundreds of billions today, give up huge chunks of territory, and drastically shrink its military. Germany was humiliated, economically destroyed, and absolutely furious. Then the Great Depression hit in 1929 and made everything worse. Unemployment in Germany skyrocketed. People were desperate, angry, and looking for someone to blame. Enter Adolf Hitler. Hitler was an Austrian-born failed artist turned politician who had an extraordinary ability to give angry speeches and point fingers at everyone except himself. He joined the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazis, rose through its ranks, and in January 1933 was appointed Chancellor of Germany. Within a year he had made himself dictator. And he had a plan. Hitler's plan had three main parts: rebuild Germany's military in violation of Versailles, reclaim German territory and unite all German-speaking people under one flag, and expand German living space, what he called Lebensraum, eastward. He started pushing, and for years nobody pushed back. In 1936, Germany remilitarized the Rhineland, a region that was supposed to stay demilitarized under Versailles. No response from Britain or France. In March 1938, Germany annexed Austria in what became known as the Anschluss. Again, no serious response. In September 1938, Hitler demanded the Sudetenland, a chunk of Czechoslovakia, with a large German-speaking population. Britain and France, desperate to avoid another war, met with Hitler in Munich and handed it over. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain flew home waving a piece of paper and declared it peace for our time. He was wrong. In March 1939, Germany swallowed the rest of Czechoslovakia. Britain and France finally started paying attention. But it was too late. On August 23, 1939, Germany and the Soviet Union signed the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, a non-aggression agreement that secretly divided Eastern Europe between them. Two countries that hated each other agreeing to be friends, for now. Then on September 1, 1939, Germany invaded Poland using a new kind of fast-moving military strategy called Blitzkrieg, lightning war. Tanks, aircraft, and infantry moving together at terrifying speed. Poland's military, still partly on horseback, didn't stand a chance. 2 days later, on September 3, 1939, Britain and France declared war on Germany. World War II had officially begun. The Soviet Union invaded Poland from the east on September 17, 1939, completing its occupation from the other side. Poland was divided between Germany and the USSR within weeks. Then came what people called the phony war. Several months where Britain and France were officially at war with Germany, but not much was actually happening on the Western Front. That quiet ended very suddenly in spring 1940. In April 1940, Germany invaded Denmark and Norway. Both fell quickly. Then in May 1940, Germany launched its main offensive in the West. In just 6 weeks, Germany defeated France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. 6 weeks. France, which had spent years and billions building an elaborate defensive line called the Maginot Line, was simply bypassed. Germany went around it through the Ardennes Forest, a route the French had considered impassable. The British Expeditionary Force was pushed all the way to the beaches of Dunkirk in northern France. In a desperate 9-day operation, between May 26 and June 4, 1940, over 338,000 Allied troops were evacuated across the English Channel, using every available boat, including civilian fishing boats, ferries, and pleasure crafts. It was a miracle of improvisation. On June 22, 1940, France signed an armistice with Germany. Paris had fallen. Germany now controlled most of Western Europe. Britain stood alone. Winston Churchill had replaced Chamberlain as British Prime Minister in May 1940, and Churchill was made of very different stuff. He told Parliament that Britain would fight on the beaches, on the landing grounds, in the fields, in the streets, and never surrender. And he meant it. Hitler expected Britain to negotiate. Britain refused. So Hitler ordered the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, to destroy the Royal Air Force and clear the way for a naval invasion. From July to October 1940, the two air forces fought one of history's most intense aerial battles over the skies of Britain. The RAF held. Germany never achieved air superiority. The invasion plan, Operation Sea Lion, was shelved. Churchill later said of the RAF pilots, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." By 1941, the war was about to get a whole lot bigger. Twice. First, on June 22, 1941, Hitler broke his pact with Stalin and invaded the Soviet Union. Operation Barbarossa was the largest land invasion in human history. Over 3 million German and Axis troops attacking along an 1,800-mile front. Initially, it was devastating for the Soviets. Germany captured millions of prisoners in the opening weeks. But the Soviet Union was enormous, and winter was coming. Then on December 7, 1941, came the second massive shock. Japan, which had already been at war with China since 1937 and had allied with Germany and Italy in the Tripartite Pact, launched a surprise attack on the American naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. 2,403 Americans were killed. 18 ships were sunk or damaged. 188 aircraft were destroyed. The next day, December 8, 1941, the United States declared war on Japan. Germany and Italy then declared war on the United States on December 11th. America was in. The war had become truly global. 1942 and 1943 are where the momentum of the war began to shift, in three key places. In the Pacific, the Battle of Midway in June 1942 was the turning point against Japan. American codebreakers had cracked Japanese naval codes and knew the attack was coming. The U.S. Navy ambushed the Japanese fleet and sank 4 Japanese aircraft carriers in a single day. Japan never fully recovered its naval supremacy. In North Africa, German General Erwin Rommel, nicknamed the Desert Fox, had been running circles around Allied forces. But at the Second Battle of El Alamein in October and November 1942, British General Bernard Montgomery finally defeated Rommel's forces. The Allies then landed in Morocco and Algeria, and squeezed Germany out of Africa entirely by May 1943. In the Soviet Union, the Battle of Stalingrad, fought from August 1942 to February 1943, was arguably the bloodiest battle in human history. Germany had pushed deep into the Soviet Union and become trapped in brutal urban combat in the city of Stalingrad. In November 1942, the Soviets launched a massive counterattack, surrounded the German Sixth Army, and refused to let go. On February 2, 1943, what was left of the German Sixth Army, roughly 91,000 freezing, starving soldiers, surrendered. It was the beginning of the end for Germany on the Eastern Front. With Africa secured, the Allies invaded Sicily in July 1943, and then mainland Italy in September 1943. Italy switched sides and surrendered, though Germany quickly occupied northern Italy, and fighting continued there until the very end of the war. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, the Soviets were pushing west relentlessly. The German advance had been stopped and reversed. City by city, the Red Army was clawing its way toward Berlin. And then came June 6, 1944. D-Day. Operation Overlord was the largest seaborne invasion in history. Over 156,000 American, British, Canadian, and Allied troops crossed the English Channel and stormed 5 beaches in Normandy, France, codenamed Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. The fighting was brutal, especially at Omaha Beach, where American troops faced withering fire, climbing steep bluffs. Thousands died in the first hours. But by the end of the day, a beachhead had been established. Paris was liberated on August 25, 1944. The Allies were driving east. The Soviets were driving west. Germany was being squeezed from both sides. In December 1944, Germany launched one last massive counteroffensive in the Ardennes, the Battle of the Bulge, that briefly pushed Allied lines back. But it was Germany's last gasp. By January 1945, it had failed. By early 1945, the end was inevitable. Soviet forces crossed into Germany from the east. American, British, and Allied forces crossed the Rhine River from the west in March 1945. On April 30th, 1945, with Soviet forces less than a mile from his underground bunker in Berlin, Adolf Hitler shot himself. He was 56 years old. On May 7, 1945, Germany signed an unconditional surrender. May 8, 1945 became known as VE Day, Victory in Europe Day. The war in Europe was over, but the war in the Pacific was not. In the Pacific, American forces had been fighting their way toward Japan island by island in some of the most brutal combat of the entire war: Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, Okinawa. Japan refused to surrender. American military planners estimated that a full invasion of the Japanese home islands could cost between 250,000 and 1 million American lives, and potentially millions more Japanese lives. President Harry Truman made the decision to use a new and terrifying weapon. On August 6, 1945, the United States dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima, Japan. Approximately 70,000 to 80,000 people died instantly. Tens of thousands more died in the following weeks and months. Japan still did not surrender. On August 9, 1945, a second atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. Approximately 40,000 people died instantly. On August 15, 1945, Japan announced its surrender. On September 2, 1945, Japan formally signed the surrender documents aboard the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay. World War II was over. 6 years. Over 30 countries involved. Somewhere between 70 and 85 million people dead, roughly 3% of the entire world population at the time. The Holocaust, in which Nazi Germany systematically murdered 6 million Jewish people and millions of others, remains one of the darkest chapters in all of human history. The world that came out the other side was fundamentally different. The United Nations was formed. The Cold War began. The modern map of the world was redrawn. World War II is not just history. It is a reminder of what happens when hatred goes unchallenged, when warning signs are ignored, and when ordinary people are called to do extraordinary things. That's a wrap on World War II for Dummies. If you learned something today, drop it in the comments. Smash that like button, subscribe to Couch Tomato, and we'll see you in the next one.